I spent years following that viral dating advice. Never let a woman trick you. It's how they test your worth. You know what it got me? Constantly checking my phone for hidden meanings in her texts, second-guessing every conversation, and 3 failed relationships. Turns out, the real test was never about avoiding manipulation. Research shows what women actually value is emotional intelligence and self-respect, not your ability to play mind games. Today I'm breaking down this dangerous half-truth and several other dating myths that might be sabotaging your relationships. Get ready for some uncomfortable truths backed by relationship science that nobody's talking about. The viral lie that's ruining your dating life. This advice has spread like wildfire across social media platforms, consuming authentic relationship wisdom in its path and leaving only smoke and ash where genuine connection could grow. On platforms everywhere, dating coaches with perfectly styled hair and confident smirks deliver the same core message. Dating is a battlefield. They claim women are constantly running tests to see if you're worthy, and every interaction might be a trap designed to make you reveal weakness. What if all that dating advice you've been consuming is actually sabotaging your chances at finding a meaningful relationship? You've probably seen those videos. They pop up in your feed with attention-grabbing titles, like "Women are constantly testing you," or "How to never get manipulated by a woman." These videos rack up millions of views, and the comment sections fill with men thanking these self-proclaimed dating experts for opening their eyes. I recently analyzed content from the top 20 male dating coaches on social media. Their videos collected over 500 million combined views in the past year alone. That's more viewership than most major television networks. The disturbing pattern: 17 of them actively promote this "don't get tricked" philosophy as their central teaching. They package it with slightly different terminology. Some call it passing her tests, others frame it as maintaining frame, and some bluntly describe it as not falling for manipulation. But the underlying message remains identical. One coach with over 3 million followers states, "Women don't respect men who can be controlled. Every request is a test of your boundaries." This messaging teaches men to view even simple requests with suspicion. Another claims, "The moment you show emotional vulnerability, she loses attraction. It's biology." Women test men to ensure strong genetics. This reinforces harmful stereotypes about emotional expression. A third with a best-selling book teaches, "When a woman asks about your past relationships, she's testing your emotional stability. Never admit any faults." Such advice actively discourages honesty. Let's examine what these dating gurus actually claim. The core belief they promote is that women primarily judge men's worth by their ability to resist manipulation. According to this worldview, women aren't looking for connection, compatibility, or character. They're running a series of tests to see if you cave under pressure. When she asks you to help with something, it's a test. When she expresses concern about your behavior, it's a test. Even her compliments become suspect. Just another trap waiting to spring. This perspective transforms normal human interaction into a complex game of chess, where you must constantly stay 3 moves ahead. Genuine moments get lost in a fog of analysis. Did she take 2 hours to respond to your text because she was busy, or is she testing your patience? Did she ask about your day because she cares, or is she probing for weaknesses? This mindset creates exhausting cycles of suspicion. The consequences are becoming clearer. In a recent survey of 300 men who actively follow this type of dating advice, 72% reported increased anxiety in their dating lives. Nearly half described feeling always on guard during interactions with women they were interested in. One respondent wrote, "I used to enjoy getting to know someone new. Now I analyze everything she says, looking for the test behind her words." When you approach every interaction looking for tests and manipulation, you find them everywhere, even when they don't exist. Normal behaviors get misinterpreted through this suspicious lens. A woman reschedules a date due to work. She's testing your patience. She asks about your previous relationships. She's fishing for vulnerabilities. She expresses an emotion. She's testing how you handle female emotions. Men adopt these strategies hoping to build stronger connections, but they actually prevent genuine relationships from forming. Real connection requires vulnerability, trust, and open communication, all things this approach actively discourages. You can't truly connect with someone while simultaneously analyzing their every word for hidden agendas. What makes this advice particularly dangerous is that it contains a kernel of truth. Respecting yourself and maintaining healthy boundaries is important in any relationship, but these dating gurus take this valid concept and twist it into something toxic, teaching men to approach dating with suspicion rather than openness. This approach fundamentally misunderstands how trust develops in relationships. Trust is built through consistent behavior, mutual respect, and working through challenges together. By framing normal relationship dynamics as manipulation attempts, these dating coaches turn potential partners into adversaries rather than allies. The actual psychological research tells a completely different story. Dr. John Gottman, who has studied relationships for over 40 years, found that successful couples build emotional bank accounts through positive interactions and responsiveness to each other's needs. Studies by Dr. Sue Johnson show that emotional availability, not guardedness, creates lasting bonds between partners. The "don't get tricked" philosophy creates an adversarial mindset that prevents genuine connection. When you're constantly scanning for manipulation, you miss opportunities for real intimacy. You become so focused on not losing that you forget what winning actually looks like. Finding someone who values you for who you are, not how well you play the game. Research from the University of Georgia examined 468 dating couples and found that mutual vulnerability, not strategic advantage, predicted relationship satisfaction and longevity. The couples who played fewer games reported feeling more fulfilled and experienced less conflict. This research points to a fundamental truth: relationships thrive on cooperation, not competition. But before we uncover what women truly value, let's look at what happens when men actually follow this advice. The real-world consequences reveal even more about why this approach fails so consistently. Real stories, the paranoia trap. Have you ever wondered what actually happens when men follow the "don't get tricked" dating strategy in real life? I've spoken with dozens of men who embraced this mindset, and their stories reveal a troubling pattern. Today, I want to share 3 real examples that show what happens when theory meets reality. Meet Jake, a 32-year-old software engineer who discovered dating strategy content after his divorce. Jake described himself as naive in his previous relationship and was determined not to repeat past mistakes. He spent months consuming videos about female manipulation tactics and how to counter them. Armed with his new knowledge, Jake felt prepared when he met Allison through a mutual friend. Their first few dates went well. Jake applied everything he'd learned, maintaining frame, not showing too much interest, and watching for tests. When Allison suggested they try a restaurant she liked, Jake remembered advice about not letting women control the planning process. He insisted on his choice instead. When she mentioned a previous relationship, he gave minimal information about his own past, recognizing this as a potential information-gathering trap. Their relationship progressed, but Jake remained vigilant. He tracked response times to messages, analyzed word choice, and maintained emotional distance. 6 weeks in, Allison called Jake late one evening, upset about a family situation. She asked if he could come over for support. Jake's immediate thought was, "This is a classic test. She's seeing if I'll drop everything at her command." He told her he was busy but could see her the next day. Allison ended things the following week, explaining she needed someone more emotionally available. The moment of clarity came for Jake when he saw her Facebook post about her grandfather's hospitalization that same night. "I felt physically ill," Jake admitted. "She wasn't testing me. She was just a human, having a hard time, who needed support. My dating strategy made me see manipulation where there was only vulnerability." Then there's Michael, a 28-year-old account manager who became so focused on passing tests that he developed serious anxiety before and during dates. I started seeing potential traps everywhere. If she took too long to respond to a text, I'd analyze whether it was a power move. If she asked personal questions, I'd wonder what information she was trying to extract. Michael's anxiety peaked during a dinner date with a woman he really liked. When she suggested splitting the check, his mind raced through contradictory advice he'd read. His internal debate became so overwhelming that he visibly froze, creating an awkward moment that disrupted their connection. I was so worried about making the right strategic move that I couldn't just be present, Michael told me. Dating became a source of stress rather than enjoyment. I still remember her confused expression as I sat there paralyzed over a simple check. That's when I realized how absurd my approach had become. The third story comes from Chris, a 34-year-old personal trainer who followed the "don't get tricked" philosophy for nearly 2 years. Chris approached dating like a tactical operation, complete with planned responses for common female testing behaviors. He kept a notes document on his phone with strategies for various scenarios. Chris met Melissa at a friend's wedding, and they started dating. When Melissa complimented his appearance, he responded minimally, having read that excessive gratitude shows neediness. When she shared insecurities about her career, he viewed it as a test of whether he would maintain frame rather than an opportunity for genuine support. 3 months into dating, Chris realized something concerning. I didn't actually know much about her as a person. I'd been so focused on not getting manipulated that I never created space for real connection. The turning point came during a dinner when Melissa shared a childhood memory and waited for Chris to reciprocate. He was so busy analyzing her story for manipulation tactics that he missed the moment entirely. The relationship ended when Melissa told Chris she felt he was always keeping her at arm's length emotionally. She said it felt like I was always analyzing her rather than getting to know her. Chris shared, and she was right. Across all 3 stories, anxiety manifested physically: stomach knots before dates, obsessive text message analysis, lying awake replaying interactions. This constant vigilance created emotional exhaustion that prevented genuine connection. These stories highlight how hypervigilance against manipulation creates a self-defeating cycle. When constantly scanning for tests and traps, genuine moments get lost in analysis. Normal relationship behaviors become suspect. A request for emotional support becomes a manipulation tactic. A genuine compliment becomes a trap. A moment of vulnerability becomes a strategic ploy. This mindset creates what psychologists call a confirmation bias loop. Once you believe women are constantly testing you, you interpret all behavior through that lens, finding evidence of manipulation even when none exists. As Dan, another man I interviewed, put it, I was so focused on not being manipulated that I forgot the whole point of dating, to find someone I genuinely connect with. The real-life consequences extend beyond disappointing dates. Men reported chronic suspicion spilling into other areas of life, relationship sabotage through misinterpretation of normal behavior, and emotional isolation. The saddest part, Jake reflected, was that I thought this approach would protect me from getting hurt. Instead, it guaranteed I'd never experience real connection. These stories reveal something crucial about dating approaches focused on avoiding manipulation. They fundamentally mistake self-protection for self-respect. The men all began with a valid desire to maintain healthy boundaries, but somewhere along the way, maintaining boundaries transformed into building walls. Self-respect comes from knowing your worth and communicating boundaries clearly. Defensive game playing comes from fear and assumes malicious intent from others. Understanding this distinction might be the most important step in transforming your dating life. Self-respect versus defensive game playing. Why do men often confuse being on guard against manipulation with having genuine self-respect? This confusion lies at the heart of many dating struggles. What seems like protective wisdom actually becomes the very thing preventing meaningful connection. Let's clarify what authentic self-respect actually looks like in relationships. Self-respect means knowing your worth and acting in alignment with your core values. It's about understanding what you need in a relationship and communicating those needs clearly. A self-respecting man doesn't need to constantly scan for tests or traps because his boundaries come from a place of inner security rather than fear. In contrast, defensive posturing masquerades as self-respect but comes from a fundamentally different place. It's reactive rather than grounded. It anticipates attacks rather than establishing healthy boundaries. Think of self-respect as a sturdy wall with a gate that opens deliberately, while defensive posturing resembles a fragile shield held constantly at the ready, exhausting to maintain and easily shattered. The behaviors of these two approaches look strikingly different in practice. A man with genuine self-respect communicates his boundaries directly. "I'm not comfortable with how you spoke to me just now." He states his needs without accusation. "I need time to myself this weekend to recharge." He makes decisions based on his values rather than tactical advantage. A defensively postured man assumes malicious intent behind normal requests. When his partner asks where he was last night, he hears an accusation rather than simple curiosity. When she expresses disappointment, he perceives it as manipulation rather than honest emotion. This creates exactly the kind of tension and distance he fears. The root difference between these approaches is their source. Self-respect grows from internal values and a stable sense of worth. It doesn't waver based on external validation or rejection. It remains consistent regardless of whether someone is trying to test you. A self-respecting man can walk away from disrespectful treatment because he knows what he deserves. Defensive game playing stems from insecurity. It's a protective shield built to prevent pain rather than a foundation for healthy connection. This approach assumes relationships are battlegrounds where someone must win and someone must lose. Consider how these different approaches manifest in everyday situations. Self-respecting response. "Sarah, when you canceled our plans last minute, I felt disappointed. I value reliability in relationships. Can we talk about expectations around scheduling?" Defensive response. "You're always canceling on me. You clearly don't respect my time. Is this some kind of test to see how much I'll tolerate?" Even more telling is how these different approaches handle vulnerability. A man with healthy self-respect can share his thoughts and feelings without fear because his worth isn't dependent on appearing perfect. He can say, "I felt hurt when that happened," without worrying that this admission diminishes him. The defensively postured man views vulnerability as dangerous territory. This protective stance creates an impossible barrier to intimacy. You cannot simultaneously hide yourself and create genuine connection. Research consistently shows that authentic confidence, not defensive posturing, creates lasting appeal. People are drawn to those who demonstrate comfort with themselves, including their imperfections. Defensive behaviors, while intended to appear strong, are usually perceived as insecurity in disguise. The defensively postured man often misreads situations in ways that become self-sabotaging. When a woman asks about his day, he wonders if she's testing his emotional stability rather than simply showing interest. These misinterpretations create distance exactly when connection could be forming. Communication styles further highlight this difference. Men with authentic self-respect ask questions out of genuine curiosity. They listen to understand rather than to formulate counter-arguments. They express themselves clearly without hidden agenda. This transparent approach creates an environment where trust can flourish. Perhaps most significantly, these different approaches create entirely different relationship outcomes. Self-respect attracts partners who value authenticity and emotional health. When you communicate clearly and hold boundaries respectfully, you naturally filter for people who appreciate these qualities. Your relationship develops based on mutual trust rather than tactical advantage. Defensive game playing, despite its intentions, often repels emotionally healthy partners while attracting those who enjoy power dynamics and strategic positioning. The very approach meant to protect from manipulation actually selects for manipulative partners. This distinction becomes even clearer when we consider how each approach handles disagreement. A self-respecting man can hear criticism without crumbling because his worth isn't dependent on being perfect. He can consider feedback thoughtfully rather than rejecting it automatically. This openness to growth strengthens rather than threatens connection. The defensively postured man perceives criticism as an attack on his worth. He defends, denies, or counterattacks rather than listening. This reactive stance prevents the vulnerability necessary for real understanding and growth. Small disagreements become major conflicts because resolution requires a vulnerability he's unwilling to show. Men with authentic self-respect choose women who respect them, while defensively postured men often end up with partners who disrespect them, not because they consciously want disrespect, but because their focus on avoiding manipulation blinds them to more important relationship qualities. The foundation of healthy attraction is creating an environment where both people feel safe to be authentic. Self-respect creates this safety naturally. Defensive posturing makes it impossible. Self-respect attracts healthy partners, while defensiveness repels them. One builds foundations for lasting connection. The other ensures connection never truly forms. One comes from internal security, the other from fear. One creates relationships based on trust, the other on suspicion. Now that we understand this distinction, let's look at what psychological research actually tells us about attraction and what qualities genuinely matter in building meaningful relationships. What psychology actually reveals about attraction. What if decades of psychological research contradicts everything these viral dating gurus are telling you? While social media dating experts focus on avoiding manipulation, researchers have spent years studying what actually creates attraction and sustains relationships. Their findings paint a very different picture than what you've been hearing. Let's start with the scientific research on attraction. For over 40 years, relationship scientists have conducted thousands of studies, examining what brings people together and keeps them together. Unlike dating coaches who base advice on personal anecdotes or evolutionary psychology theories, these researchers use controlled studies, large sample sizes, and peer-reviewed methodologies to understand human connection. Dr. Robert Sternberg's triangular theory of love identified 3 core components that create lasting relationships: intimacy, emotional connection, passion, physical attraction, and commitment, the decision to maintain the relationship. Think of these elements as the foundation, walls, and roof of a house. You need all 3 for a stable structure. Notably absent from this theory is any emphasis on strategic behavior or manipulation avoidance as core elements of attraction. When examining what women specifically value in relationships, research reveals a stark contrast to the manipulation-focused narrative popular on social media. A meta-analysis of over 30 studies found that emotional responsiveness, perceived partner support, and mutual trust consistently predict relationship satisfaction for women. These qualities create emotional security, the feeling that your partner understands and accepts you as you are. This research challenges the idea that women primarily judge men based on their ability to avoid being manipulated. Studies consistently show that mutual trust functions like the cables of a suspension bridge, essential for supporting the weight of a relationship through difficult times. When people feel emotionally safe with their partners, they report higher relationship satisfaction, lower conflict, and greater relationship longevity. Consider this contradiction. Dating coaches tell you to maintain vigilance against manipulation, while research demonstrates that mutual trust is essential for relationship success. These approaches cannot coexist effectively. You cannot establish deep trust while constantly suspecting manipulation. Cross-cultural research further undermines the "don't get tricked" narrative. Studies examining mate preferences across dozens of countries find that warmth, reliability, and emotional intelligence rank among the most desired traits. A study of over 10,000 people across 37 countries revealed remarkable consistency in what people value in long-term partners. Kindness, understanding, and intelligence rank consistently high regardless of cultural background. This cross-cultural consistency suggests these preferences reflect deeper human needs for connection and security. Whether in individualistic Western societies or collectivist Eastern cultures, people seek partners who make them feel safe, understood, and valued. Dr. John Gottman's longitudinal research, following thousands of couples over 4 decades, provides compelling evidence against manipulation-focused dating strategies. His studies demonstrate that relationships built on mutual respect last longer than those founded on power dynamics. Gottman identified specific behaviors that predict relationship success with over 90% accuracy. Successful couples demonstrate emotional bids, attempts to connect emotionally, and their partners typically respond positively. In contrast, failing relationships show patterns of criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling, behaviors that emerge when partners view each other as adversaries rather than allies. These patterns act like rot in the foundation of a relationship, eventually causing structural collapse. Emotional intelligence consistently ranks high in partner preferences across demographics. A study in the Journal of Personality found that emotional intelligence was valued highly, regardless of age, gender, or relationship stage. This includes recognizing emotions in yourself and others, managing emotional responses, and responding appropriately to others' emotional needs. Skills that function like an emotional immune system, helping relationships weather inevitable conflicts. This contrasts with the emotional suppression often advocated by manipulation-focused dating advice. Many dating coaches suggest hiding emotions to avoid appearing weak, yet research shows that emotional intelligence, including appropriate emotional expression, attracts potential partners. Attachment theory research further challenges manipulation-focused dating advice. Studies consistently show that secure attachment, characterized by comfort with closeness and trust in relationships, predicts greater relationship satisfaction than insecure attachment styles. Manipulation-focused dating advice often encourages behaviors associated with avoidant attachment, maintaining emotional distance and limiting vulnerability. Yet relationships with at least one securely attached partner tend to be more satisfying and stable over time. A study in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that couples who approached disagreements with openness and willingness to understand each other's perspectives reported higher relationship satisfaction than those who approached conflicts as competitions to be won. This directly contradicts the power dynamic approach promoted by many dating gurus. Even speed dating studies, examining what creates interest in the first few minutes of interaction, find that perceived responsiveness, feeling that someone is truly listening and caring about what you say, predicts attraction more strongly than displays of status or power. This body of research reveals a different framework for understanding attraction. Rather than seeing relationships as battlegrounds, where you must constantly defend against manipulation, research suggests viewing relationships as opportunities for connection, growth, and mutual support. What do psychological studies reveal about what women truly value? Emotional intelligence, reliability, and the capacity for mutual trust consistently emerge as core values. Women seek partners who make them feel secure, understood, and respected, someone who can manage their emotions while responding sensitively to others' feelings. This research doesn't suggest ignoring red flags or accepting disrespectful treatment. Healthy boundaries remain essential, but it does suggest that emotional intelligence might be the most underrated skill in modern dating, the foundation upon which successful relationships are built. The emotional intelligence advantage. Could your emotional intelligence be the hidden factor determining your dating success? While most dating advice focuses on tactics and strategies, research consistently shows that emotional intelligence, not strategic game playing, creates the foundation for meaningful relationships. Emotional intelligence in dating means having the ability to understand and manage your own emotions while accurately reading and responding to the emotions of others. It's about navigating the complex emotional landscape of human connection with awareness rather than anxiety. Emotional intelligence treats dating as an opportunity for genuine understanding, unlike approaches that view it as a competition. Men with high emotional intelligence demonstrate distinctive behaviors. When a date subtly crosses her arms and leans back during a conversation about politics, he notices this physical signal of discomfort and smoothly transitions to another topic. He recognizes his disappointment when she reschedules their dinner but responds with understanding rather than accusation. He shows interest through thoughtful questions that build on her previous answers. In contrast, a man focused solely on avoiding manipulation analyzes every interaction suspiciously. When his date reschedules, he assumes she's testing him rather than acknowledging her legitimate schedule conflict. When she inquires about his past, he becomes guarded instead of recognizing her attempt to connect. This hypervigilance blocks the natural flow that makes dating enjoyable. Emotional intelligence functions like a relationship compass, guiding you through complex interactions with greater accuracy than any strategic playbook. It consists of 4 interconnected components: self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills. Self-awareness means recognizing your emotional triggers and understanding when your reactions stem from past experiences rather than present reality. Self-regulation involves processing feelings appropriately. Feeling disappointed about a canceled date without sending passive-aggressive text. Experiencing rejection without lashing out. Empathy allows you to understand others' emotional experiences, seeing that a date's distance might reflect self-protection rather than game playing. Social skills enable effective communication, expressing interest without appearing desperate and navigating disagreements without escalation. Emotional intelligence manifests in crucial dating situations. When reading social cues, an emotional intelligent man distinguishes between a polite smile and genuine enthusiasm. At a crowded restaurant, he notices when his date's voice becomes strained from talking over the noise and suggests moving to a quieter spot. He senses whether her lingering touch signals comfort with greater physical connection or represents a casual gesture. This attunement creates safety that allows natural connection. Managing rejection demonstrates emotional intelligence in action. Rather than becoming defensive when someone decides not to continue dating, the emotionally intelligent response acknowledges their right to their preferences. Instead of trying to change their mind, he accepts the decision gracefully, processes his disappointment privately, and maintains self-respect. The ability to express appropriate vulnerability, sharing authentic thoughts and feelings as trust builds, creates intimacy that purely strategic approaches cannot achieve. Emotional intelligence also helps distinguish between actual manipulation and normal relationship dynamics. Every relationship involves influence, asking for needs, expressing preferences, and compromising. A woman expressing her feelings about something you did represents communication, not manipulation. A woman having standards for treatment demonstrates self-respect, not testing. A woman inquiring about your past shows interest in understanding you, not gathering ammunition. Emotional intelligence helps you respond without unnecessary defensiveness. This distinction provides a tremendous advantage. When you're not constantly scanning for manipulation, you can be present and responsive, enjoying getting to know someone without analyzing their every word. You can build trust through consistent, authentic behavior rather than strategic positioning. Wondering how to develop these crucial skills? Start by increasing awareness of your emotional patterns. Notice what triggers feelings of insecurity or anxiety in dating situations, and how these emotions influence your behavior. Practice naming your emotions. Specifically, are you disappointed, frustrated, or embarrassed? This emotional vocabulary helps process feelings more effectively. Improve your ability to read others by paying attention to facial expressions, tone of voice, and body language alongside their words. Develop curiosity about others' emotional experiences through thoughtful questions. When difficult emotions arise, practice self-soothing techniques like deep breathing or reframing situations objectively. Emotional intelligence enables authentic connection while maintaining healthy boundaries. It allows you to be both strong and open, both self-respecting and vulnerable. You can protect yourself from harmful behavior without shutting down opportunities for meaningful connection. You can express needs clearly without manipulation or game playing. This approach creates relationships based on mutual understanding rather than strategic advantage. It attracts partners who value authenticity rather than power games. It builds connections that feel secure rather than constantly tested. Most importantly, it allows you to remain true to yourself while growing with another person. Understanding emotional intelligence leads us to a critical question. Why do manipulation-focused strategies create anxiety instead of connection? The answer lies in how our nervous systems respond to perceived threat versus perceived safety, and the dramatic difference this creates in our capacity for genuine intimacy. The anxiety paradox in strategic dating. What happens in your brain when you approach every date as a potential manipulation attempt? This question gets to the core of why strategic dating often feels so exhausting. When you're constantly on alert for manipulation, your body enters a state that psychologists call hypervigilance, a condition where you're perpetually scanning your environment for threats. Hypervigilance creates profound physical changes in your body. Your nervous system has two main operating modes: the sympathetic system, fight or flight, and the parasympathetic system, rest and digest. When you perceive a threat, even a social threat like possible manipulation, your sympathetic nervous system activates automatically. Think of your nervous system like a smoke detector that never turns off. Instead of beeping only when there's actual danger, it keeps blaring constantly, keeping you in a perpetual state of alarm. This activation triggers a cascade of physiological responses: racing heart, shallow breathing, tense muscles, and stress hormones, flooding your system. All evolutionary responses designed for physical threats, not coffee dates. Imagine sitting across from someone you're interested in while your body is preparing for battle. Your palms might sweat, your mouth might feel dry, your thoughts might race, and you might struggle to stay present in the conversation. These physical symptoms make it nearly impossible to relax and connect naturally. You're too busy scanning for threats to engage authentically. Research shows that when your brain is in this threat detection mode, it physically cannot access the neural networks responsible for social bonding and empathy. Your brain diverts resources away from the prefrontal cortex, which handles complex social interactions, and toward the more primitive limbic system, which focuses exclusively on survival. This explains why men who approach dating with constant suspicion often report feeling robotic or mechanical during interactions. Their brains are operating in a mode designed for protection rather than connection. They're physically unable to access the emotional warmth and spontaneity that make dating enjoyable. The impact on communication is equally significant. Anxiety fundamentally changes how you perceive social cues. Research consistently shows that anxious individuals are more likely to interpret neutral facial expressions as negative or threatening. A date's thoughtful pause might be seen as judgment. A casual question about your day might feel like an interrogation. A normal boundary might seem like a power play. This misinterpretation creates a dangerous feedback loop. When you perceive neutral behaviors as threats, you respond defensively. Your defensive response makes your date uncomfortable, causing them to become more guarded. Their guardedness confirms your suspicion that they were testing you, reinforcing your belief that vigilance is necessary. This self-fulfilling cycle continues, creating exactly the adversarial dynamic you feared. I once spoke with a client who described a promising date that went sideways when his date mentioned her ex. His hyper-vigilant mind immediately interpreted this as a manipulation tactic rather than normal conversation. His body tensed, his answers became curt, and he mentally checked out, all while she wondered why his warmth suddenly disappeared. What could have been a meaningful connection dissolved because his internal alarm system couldn't distinguish between a genuine conversation and a perceived threat. Consider what happens when a woman asks about your previous relationships. With a calm nervous system, you might recognize this as normal curiosity about your life experiences, but in a hypervigilant state, your brain immediately flags this as a potential threat. She's trying to gather information she can use against me later. Your response becomes guarded and suspicious, which makes her feel you're hiding something or unwilling to open up. The connection stalls, not because she was manipulating you, but because your threat detection system misinterpreted her normal curiosity. This chronic state of alert creates what neuroscientists call negative prediction error. Your brain constantly anticipates threats that don't materialize, but hypervigilance maintains the threat assessment. Each date becomes another opportunity to confirm your suspicions rather than connect authentically. Building trust and intimacy requires the release of oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Research shows that oxytocin production is inhibited by stress hormones produced during hypervigilance. Your body cannot simultaneously be in a state of high alert and a state of bonding. Studies examining brain activity reveal something fascinating. Trust and connection literally require a calm nervous system. When participants in research felt safe with another person, their brain activity showed reduced activation in threat detection regions and increased activation in regions associated with social connection and pleasure. This physiological state cannot coexist with the constant threat assessment that strategic dating encourages. The chronic stress of hypervigilance also impairs your cognitive functions. Your working memory decreases, making it harder to remember details about your date or maintain engaging conversation. Your cognitive flexibility diminishes, making it difficult to adapt to the natural flow of interaction. Your attention narrows to focus only on potential threats, causing you to miss positive signals of interest or connection. Perhaps most damaging is how this approach affects your emotional availability. Connecting requires emotional presence, being open, responsive, and engaged in the moment. Hypervigilance makes emotional presence impossible because your attention is divided between the conversation and your internal threat assessment. You're simultaneously trying to connect and protect, goals that fundamentally conflict. The alternative approach creates a dramatically different experience. When you approach dating with openness rather than suspicion, your nervous system remains calm. This physiological state allows access to your full social capabilities: empathy, humor, curiosity, and warmth. You can listen deeply, respond authentically, and connect genuinely. This doesn't mean ignoring red flags or accepting disrespectful treatment. It means approaching interactions with the assumption that most people have mixed, but generally decent intentions, rather than assuming deliberate manipulation. This starting point creates safety rather than hypervigilance. Understanding this neurobiological reality helps explain why strategic dating feels so exhausting and ultimately unsatisfying. It's physically unsustainable. Your body wasn't designed to remain in a constant state of vigilance. This approach not only fails to create meaningful connection, but also creates chronic stress that impacts your overall well-being. Now that we understand why this approach fails, let's examine what authentic confidence actually looks like. A state that creates safety for both you and your potential partner, allowing real connection to flourish. The signals of authentic confidence. How can women instantly tell the difference between real confidence and insecure posturing? The distinction is rarely about what men say, but rather how they behave in specific situations. These behavioral patterns send powerful signals that women recognize, often subconsciously, within minutes of interaction. Authentic confidence and compensatory behaviors look dramatically different in practice. Think about how different men handle making a mistake. A confidently vulnerable man simply acknowledges the error. "You're right, I misunderstood what you were saying." He doesn't feel threatened by being wrong because his sense of worth doesn't depend on appearing perfect. An insecure man, however, deflects blame. "You didn't explain it clearly," or "that's not what I meant." This defensiveness stems from feeling that admitting a mistake diminishes his value. These contrasting behaviors appear consistently across different situations. When receiving feedback, the confidently secure man listens thoughtfully, even if the feedback is critical. He can separate constructive criticism from his core sense of self. The insecure man becomes defensive, interrupts to explain himself, or dismisses the feedback entirely. His reaction reveals how feedback threatens his fragile self-image. Research on nonverbal cues shows that authentic confidence manifests physically in ways that can't be easily faked. Men with genuine confidence display relaxed body language. They take up appropriate space, maintain comfortable posture, and move deliberately. They're at ease with silence and maintain consistent eye contact that communicates engagement without intensity. These signals stem from a calm nervous system, as their bodies aren't on high alert for threats to status or worth. This contrasts with the tense posturing of insecurity, rigid posture, excessive gesturing, shifting weight, or avoidant eye contact that betrays inner tension. Communication patterns reveal equally clear differences. Genuinely confident men ask questions from authentic curiosity and engage in active listening, focusing on understanding rather than planning their next impressive statement. They express boundaries directly. "I prefer not to discuss my income," rather than becoming defensive when uncomfortable topics arise. Conversely, insecurely confident men typically dominate conversations, interrupt others, and redirect attention to themselves. Their communication establishes superiority rather than connection, often emphasizing external indicators of success, like wealth or dating history. This reliance on external validation reveals underlying insecurity, requiring constant reinforcement. Consider how Tom and James handled the same situation at a dinner party. When corrected about a historical fact, Tom smiled, said thanks for the correction, and continued the conversation. James insisted he was right, pulled out his phone to search for evidence, and spent 10 minutes justifying his original statement. Everyone felt comfortable with Tom, while James created tension that lasted all evening. How different men handle disagreement provides perhaps the clearest window into authentic versus insecure confidence. A genuinely confident man can engage with differing viewpoints without feeling personally threatened. He recognizes that disagreement isn't a challenge to his worth. The insecurely confident man reacts to disagreement as if it were an attack, becoming combative, dismissive, or passive-aggressive. These reactions stem from equating his opinions with his worth. Perhaps most surprisingly, authentic confidence allows for appropriate vulnerability rather than rigid self-protection. Research shows the ability to share genuine thoughts, feelings, and concerns actually signals security and self-worth. As one relationship expert explains, women are actually drawn to men who are willing to share their thoughts and feelings, even if those feelings could potentially make them appear less than perfect. This insight explains why vulnerability, when expressed appropriately, becomes attractive rather than weakness. The key distinction lies in how vulnerability is expressed. Emotionally dysregulated men have such a disproportionate response to the trigger that it makes them look emotionally dysregulated. Their reactions seem excessive to the situation. In contrast, appropriately vulnerable men express feelings without being overwhelmed by them, sharing disappointment or hurt without dramatic displays or emotional withdrawal. Another crucial signal appears in handling rejection. The genuinely confident man accepts rejection without taking it personally, understanding it's about compatibility, not personal worth. The insecurely confident man takes rejection as a personal attack, becoming angry, persistent, or immediately devaluing the person who rejected him. What makes these signals so influential is that they're largely unconscious. Most people can't articulate exactly why someone seems confidently authentic versus insecurely posturing. They simply feel the difference. Women often describe this as something felt off, or he seemed trying too hard when encountering compensatory confidence. This unconscious assessment happens because our brains have evolved sophisticated mechanisms for evaluating potential partners. We pick up subtle cues indicating emotional reliability, honesty, and security, qualities that matter significantly more for relationship success than superficial traits. The most fascinating aspect is that these signals can't be consistently faked. Under stress, rejection, or conflict, your true security level emerges. This explains why dating strategies focused on projecting confidence often fail. They address symptoms rather than underlying insecurity. Authentically confident men acknowledge mistakes without defensiveness, express boundaries clearly without aggression, handle disagreement with openness, and accept rejection without devastation. They listen more than speak, ask genuine questions, and remain consistent across different situations. These signals explain why relationships based on strategic control inevitably fail. When approaching relationships with tactics designed to project confidence rather than developing genuine security, you create connections built on performance rather than authenticity, performances that eventually break down under the normal stresses of intimate relationships. Why don't get tricked relationships always fail? What's the inevitable outcome? When you build a relationship on constant suspicion, the answer becomes clear when we look at relationship trajectories over time. Just as a house built on a weak foundation eventually collapses, relationships founded on distrust follow a predictable path toward failure. Relationship experts can often forecast a couple's future based on their initial approach and mindset. When one partner enters with a "don't get tricked" mentality, they set in motion patterns that create exactly what they fear most: disconnection and conflict. This mindset acts like a lens that colors everything they see, transforming normal behaviors into suspected manipulation. Think about what happens in your brain when you're constantly suspicious. Every action your partner takes must be analyzed for hidden motives. Did she ask about your day because she cares? Or is she fishing for weaknesses? Did she cancel plans because something came up? Or is she testing your reaction? This constant threat assessment creates a mental environment where connection becomes nearly impossible. The downward spiral begins when one partner consistently views the other as potentially manipulative. What starts as cautious protection transforms into a self-fulfilling prophecy, similar to the hypervigilance we discussed earlier that creates the very problems it aims to prevent. The relationship deteriorates through predictable stages, like a building slowly crumbling under its own weight. Initially, suspicion takes root. You enter interactions already on guard, watching for tests or traps rather than opportunities for connection. Gottman's research shows that this defensive posture immediately inhibits the positive sentiment override necessary for healthy relationships. This weariness leads directly to the second stage: misinterpretation of neutral actions. Normal relationship behaviors become loaded with sinister meaning. When she expresses disappointment, you see manipulation rather than honest emotion. When she asks for support, you perceive a power play rather than a genuine need. The suspicious mind finds evidence everywhere, even when none exists. These misinterpretations naturally evolve into the third stage: defensive responses. When you perceive an attack, you defend yourself, perhaps by withdrawing emotionally, responding with hostility, or attempting to regain perceived control. These defensive reactions make no sense to a partner who wasn't attacking in the first place. From her perspective, your behavior seems disproportionate and confusing. Consequently, your defensive responses trigger the fourth stage: partner withdrawal. Faced with consistent defensiveness, your partner begins to pull back emotionally. She shares less, risks less, and gradually creates distance. This withdrawal isn't manipulation, it's self-protection. Anyone would retreat from interactions that consistently feel hostile or guarded. Finally, this withdrawal feeds the last stage: confirmation of suspicions. When your partner becomes distant, your suspicious mind sees validation. See? She was just playing games all along. The painful irony is that your suspicion created the very outcome you feared. Your relationship ends not because she was manipulative, but because your constant suspicion made genuine connection impossible. Research consistently shows that trust forms the foundation of relationship longevity. Without trust, couples cannot navigate the challenges that inevitably arise. Studies from the Gottman Institute, which has followed couples for decades, demonstrate that trust and commitment predict relationship success more accurately than any other factors. Couples who assume positive intent from their partners stay together longer and report greater satisfaction than those who approach relationships with suspicion. This research highlights why the manipulation detection mindset prevents lasting connection. Sustainable relationships require vulnerability, the willingness to share your authentic thoughts, feelings, and needs. Intimacy grows when both partners feel safe enough to reveal themselves gradually over time. The suspicious mind makes this vulnerability impossible because it interprets openness as weakness that could be exploited. Consider what happens when your partner shares something personal. In a trust-based relationship, this vulnerability deepens your connection. In a suspicion-based relationship, you wonder, why is she telling me this? Is she trying to make me reveal something in return? This analysis prevents the natural exchange of vulnerability that builds intimacy. The manipulation detection mindset also creates a paradox. The more you try to avoid being manipulated, the less capable you become of recognizing genuine manipulation when it occurs. When everything looks like a test, you lose the ability to distinguish between someone expressing a legitimate need and someone attempting to control you. Relationships built on suspicion typically end in one of two ways. Some conclude with painful confirmation bias, where the suspicious partner finally finds what they believe is definitive proof of manipulation. Others end through sheer exhaustion from constant vigilance. The chronic stress of constant threat assessment eventually depletes your emotional resources. The saddest aspect of these endings is their unnecessary nature. Many relationships that fail due to suspicion could have flourished with a different starting mindset. The suspicious partner often truly wanted connection, but used strategies that guaranteed disconnection. This pattern reveals something profound about human connection. We tend to create the very relationship dynamics we most fear. When you expect manipulation, you behave in ways that damage trust. When trust erodes, your partner responds with behaviors that look like the manipulation you feared. The alternative approach creates dramatically different outcomes. When you begin with a baseline assumption of good intent, not naive trust, but openness to the possibility that most people aren't trying to manipulate you, you create space for genuine connection to develop. Why do relationships based on suspicion inevitably fail? Because sustainable intimacy requires mutual trust that this mindset makes impossible. You cannot simultaneously protect yourself from all potential manipulation and build the vulnerability necessary for meaningful connection. This brings us to the evidence-based approach that actually works in modern dating. Instead of focusing on avoiding manipulation, research suggests a completely different framework, one based on developing authentic confidence, emotional intelligence, and clear communication. This approach not only attracts healthier partners, but creates the foundation for lasting connection. The evidence-based approach to modern dating. What if decades of relationship research pointed to a completely different strategy than what's going viral? While social media dating gurus promote manipulation detection as your path to success, relationship scientists have been quietly studying what actually works. Their findings paint a very different picture of effective dating. The evidence-based framework for modern dating looks nothing like the strategic positioning you see in viral videos. It's built on principles drawn from psychology research spanning over 40 years, involving thousands of couples across different cultures and relationship stages. These studies consistently show that relationship success stems from connection-oriented behaviors rather than defensive strategies. The contrast between this evidence-based approach and the manipulation detection strategy becomes clear when we examine 5 key principles. Where one approach assumes adversarial intentions, the other creates opportunities for genuine connection. Where one focuses on protection, the other emphasizes growth. Principle 1. Intrinsic confidence. Through genuine self-development, research shows that people with non-contingent self-esteem, meaning their self-worth isn't dependent on external factors, are rated as more attractive and authentic. This type of confidence comes from pursuing personal goals and interests that bring you satisfaction, fitness, mastery, community involvement, rather than chasing external validation. In practice, the intrinsically confident man values himself based on how he lives his values, not how others perceive him. Consider a date where your career comes up. Instead of emphasizing status or earnings, you might share what meaningful challenges you're tackling. This steadiness creates reliability that builds trust over time. Principle 2. Emotional self-soothing to manage your reactions. This means developing the ability to recognize when you're becoming emotionally flooded and taking responsibility for regulating those feelings. According to John Gottman's research with married couples, the ability to self-soothe is the single best male predictor of marital success. Imagine your date cancels plans last minute. Instead of sending an angry text, you might take a brief walk, practice deep breathing, or use specific phrases that help you refocus. Gottman's studies show that couples who can self-soothe avoid the 4 horsemen behaviors: criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling, which strongly predict relationship failure. Principle 3. Secure vulnerability that shares genuine concerns. This doesn't mean emotional vomiting or constant confession of insecurities. It means expressing authentic thoughts and feelings in a regulated way as trust builds. Research from social psychology studies shows that sharing both positive and negative feelings increases perceived warmth and confidence when regulated rather than suppressed. For example, after a few dates, you might share how a work situation made you feel uncertain, rather than presenting only your accomplishments. When you express appropriate vulnerability, you create opportunities for your partner to respond supportively, building attachment bonds that casual interactions cannot create. Principle 4. Graceful rejection, handling that accepts decisions. This means responding to no with respect and moving forward, rather than clinging or becoming insulting. Attachment research from developmental psychology shows that securely attached individuals disengage politely and redirect their energy elsewhere when faced with rejection. If someone declines a second date, responding with a simple "I understand, take care" demonstrates maturity and self-worth. This behavior shows that your value doesn't depend on any one person's approval. You have alternatives and maintain dignity regardless of outcome, making you more attractive to future connections. Principle 5. Curious communication that builds understanding. This means asking thoughtful follow-up questions and genuinely trying to understand your date's perspective. Studies on relationship formation show that self-disclosure and responsive listening heighten feelings of closeness and warmth between strangers and partners alike. When your date mentions a challenging family situation, rather than analyzing what they really mean, you might ask, "What was that experience like for you?" Research shows this inquisitively attuned approach predicts both early attraction and long-term satisfaction. These 5 principles create a completely different dating experience. Instead of exhausting vigilance, you experience the freedom of authentic expression. Instead of constant analysis, you enjoy present-moment connection. This approach feels different to your potential partners, who sense your genuine interest rather than guarded assessment. The benefits extend beyond individual interactions. Research shows that people who follow these principles tend to attract partners with similar values and emotional health. You'll find yourself connecting with people who appreciate directness rather than game playing, and emotional maturity rather than power dynamics. This isn't about lowering standards or accepting mistreatment. You still maintain boundaries, express preferences, and walk away from disrespectful behavior. The difference lies in your starting assumption. You approach interactions with an open mind rather than preemptive suspicion. The evidence-based approach requires more emotional maturity than manipulation detection strategies. It means taking responsibility for your feelings, risking occasional disappointment, and developing genuine confidence. These challenges explain why many find it easier to adopt protective strategies instead. However, the rewards far outweigh the challenges. You experience the freedom of authentic expression rather than constant performance. You build connections based on mutual appreciation rather than power dynamics. You attract partners who value who you truly are. Most importantly, you create the foundation for relationships that can actually last. Attracting partners who value your authentic self. What kind of partner are you actually attracting with your current approach to dating? Your strategy doesn't just determine your experience, it filters who stays in your life. The partners you attract directly reflect the energy you put into the dating world. Relationship compatibility follows patterns based on emotional health and authenticity. When you consistently show up as your authentic self, you naturally attract people who value that authenticity. When you approach dating with strategic games, you attract people who respond to those games, typically not partners who create healthy, lasting relationships. Men who approach dating with constant vigilance against manipulation tend to attract two specific types of partners. First, they attract people who enjoy power dynamics and strategic positioning. These individuals see connection as a competition rather than collaboration, drawn to the challenge you present rather than the person you are. Second, manipulation-focused men often attract partners with insecure attachment styles. These individuals expect relationships to involve power struggles because that's what they've experienced before. They feel comfortable with the emotional distance that strategic dating creates. The relationship becomes a familiar dance of advance and retreat, with neither person fully trusting or connecting. One relationship study observed that men with fake confidence often choose women who disrespect them. This happens because men seeking external validation rather than internal security find themselves drawn to partners who reinforce their insecurities. You expect to be tested, so you attract partners who test you, confirming your belief that vigilance is necessary. Research shows that authentic self-expression attracts partners with similar values and emotional health. When you present yourself genuinely, sharing your actual interests, expressing appropriate emotions, and communicating directly, you attract people who value these qualities. These partners appreciate honesty over performance, connection over competition. Women are attracted to men who seek respect over approval. When you prioritize being respected for your authentic self rather than approved of for your performance, you filter for partners who value substance over appearance. These partners seek someone to build something meaningful with, not someone to play games with. Mutual respect creates a foundation for genuine intimacy. When both partners approach the relationship with openness, they create an environment where vulnerability becomes possible. This vulnerability builds emotional intimacy that strategic relationships never achieve. Vulnerability is an attractive quality, as it creates connection. While constant emotional neediness can overwhelm a new relationship, appropriate vulnerability strengthens connection. Sharing genuine concerns while demonstrating a plan for improvement boosts closeness without harming competence. Consider this scenario. A man on a third date decides to abandon his usual strategic approach. Instead of carefully crafting his responses to seem impressive, he shares a genuine challenge he's facing at work and how it's affecting him. His date, rather than being put off, leans forward with interest. She shares a similar experience, and for the first time, they connect on a level neither had experienced in previous dates. This authentic moment creates more attraction than all their previous carefully managed interactions combined. In relationships founded on authentic connection, partners reveal themselves gradually. As trust builds, they share insecurities without fear of exploitation. They express needs directly rather than through manipulation. They view challenges as opportunities to grow together rather than power struggles to win individually. Relationships based on strategic control remain superficial. Both partners conceal their true selves, showing only calculated aspects of their personalities. They communicate indirectly, hinting at needs rather than expressing them clearly. They view conflicts as battles rather than problems to solve together. A man's communication style is crucial in attracting a partner. When you ask questions from genuine curiosity versus tactical information gathering, the difference is palpable. A man who asks, "What made you choose that career?" with genuine interest creates a moment where his date feels seen. This differs dramatically from the same question asked to assess her status or compatibility with his life plan. Relationships built on authentic connection view problems as opportunities to understand each other better. Partners share concerns directly and collaborate on solutions, strengthening their bond through difficulty. Conversely, relationships built on strategic control view problems as threats to the power balance, weakening their connection with each challenge. The authentic dating approach creates the possibility for a relationship that enhances your life. When you attract someone who values your authentic self, you experience the freedom of being accepted for who you are. This acceptance creates space for growth, full self-expression, and building something meaningful together. Responsiveness turns attraction into attachment. Initial attraction develops into lasting connection through consistent emotional response. When both partners respond to each other's needs, express genuine interest, and show up authentically, they create bonds that transcend early dating excitement. To attract partners who value your authentic self, demonstrate genuine self-respect, emotional intelligence, and openness to connection. Know your worth without constantly proving it. Express your thoughts and feelings clearly while respecting others' boundaries. Approach potential partners with curiosity rather than suspicion. This approach requires courage because it involves real vulnerability. You risk actual rejection of your authentic self rather than rejection of a persona. This vulnerability feels frightening precisely because it's real. You're sharing who you truly are. However, this approach creates the possibility for genuine connection that strategic dating cannot. When someone chooses you based on your authentic self, you know they're choosing the real you, not a performance that will eventually become exhausting. This creates relationships built on appreciation rather than strategy, collaboration rather than competition, and growth rather than stagnation. The quality of partners you attract directly reflects the quality of energy you bring to dating. When you approach relationships with openness rather than suspicion, you create possibilities for connection that strategic positioning can never achieve. The truth about what women want isn't some secret manipulation detection skill. It's the courage to be authentically yourself while respecting both your boundaries and hers. This takes more strength than constant vigilance against being tricked. When you approach dating with openness, you create space for genuine connection, where both people feel seen and valued. Just like I learned after years of defensive dating, authentic relationships flourish when we drop our shields. Your journey starts with a choice. Will you see dating as a manipulation contest or embrace the rewarding path of authenticity? Consider your patterns today. Which path will you choose?